Happy Monday, everybody. It is Act 3 on CHLY 101.7 FM. I'm Kathy Holmes. I am your host, and I'm really glad to be here. Today's guest is a guest that I have so much appreciation for. She was a long-time counselor in Nanaimo. She's recently moved into Alberta. We miss her so much, really talented, and she's doing something that I think so many of us wish we had the courage to do. She's written a book, and this particular book is about anxiety therapy at home, and dancing with your shadow. Welcome to the program, Helena. How are you?
Yay!
Yay! Helena Green is in the booth.
Yay, girl power.
Yay, girl power. I'm really glad that you're here. Truly, this book is quite inspirational, and it really does break down the steps. You know, Helena, this is a very difficult time in the world for people. There's a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of stress for multiple reasons.
Yep.
Is that what kind of brought you to bringing this book to light, or what was the motivation behind it?
Well, for sure. I mean, as you can appreciate, I'm on the front lines with my antennas tuned and paying attention to certainly like the human condition in general. So as I'm sitting here in the midst of a pandemic, working on my own balance and clarity and groundedness as a counselor, as a person who is invested in the health and well-being of people, I'm going, hey, what can I do to bring a little bit of light or clarity or balance or completeness? It's about completeness and presence to the world. So first I thought, well, because part of my program is little old lady wisdom. Sometimes I introduce myself as a semi-retired counselor, little old lady with a sense of humor. I mean, you know,
nothing old about you, so that doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
most people get that. Most people resonate with that. It's okay, yeah, she's real. Yeah, so I'm known for being real. Anyway, so here I am. I'm sitting here going, what can I do? Part of my program is about some kind of a platform for wellness. It's called 5 Pillar Basics. It's part of the book, and it includes just some kind of structure for wellness. Part of it is meditating. I found as my with my life experience that there are certain key features that set us up for success and overall health. And so meditation was my first, I guess, offering, and it's a 33-day challenge. I offered it to a lot of people, my friends on the coast, and I mean, I work with people around the world. So a lot of people got this. So it's a 33-day challenge. It's on my anxiety therapy at home page, as well as on my my overall website, which is Counseling for the Health of It. So that kind of gives you an idea. A little bit of personality there at my angle, so let's just laugh together.
That's actually a really good beginning as a segue, because what I try to tell people, not usually this early in the show, but why not get them prepared? In all fairness, you're going to want to get the information from Helena Green, because she not only are you going to want to go to her website, you're going to want to read the book. And I know for a fact that she's looking for some inspirational readers who are interested in maybe previewing this book. But before we get to all of that,
yeah,
I want to go back to the medication, or the not medication,
the inspiration.
Meditation, I suppose.
Inspiration, medication, malupination, fatamidation. Yeah, to answer your question.
Asian words, we like the Asians. So, but
you're gonna have fun.
I know a lot of people have a really hard time with meditation, and that's why I just want to go back. When you're anxious, I guess I'm going to beat into the question, right? You're writing on anxiety. When you're anxious, how do you stop your mind from doing the crazies? How do you meditate with a crazy mind?
Well, it's all a matter of step by step. Going back to your other question, though, before we drill into that, the inspiration, right, for doing this, the meditation was just the beginning. Okay, the meditation was okay, I can do that, but then the big insight, I really feel like I'm divinely guided and supported. Okay, I'm on some kind of a flow. I've said all along that the book has its own needs. and I'm just answering the needs of this vision, okay, if for lack of a better word. So what came from the meditation was, I'm trained in compassionate inquiry, that's Gabor Mate's work, internal family systems, Dick Schwartz, and of course, my modality of choice to get into the deep stuff, the deep healing, the shadow work, is meridian tapping.
I see.
Versus EMDR, versus LMNOP, whatever is going on, that's my thing that I have found personally, because I've tried them all, to be very effective, because it works with the body.
Right.
As well as, so if you know anything about trauma, you have to go to the source, which involves the emotion and the body. So what I bring to the table, I guess, that was, I thought, hey, we're not getting this on the planet. And certainly the people who come to me who have said, you know, they've had anxiety all their life, and the doctors or whoever they've been talking to, professionals, are saying, well, just get used to it. And I'm kind of going, well, let's just kind of table that for a minute and be curious, open-minded, and let's explore. So with anxiety therapy at home, it's bringing the subconscious into the mix, beyond the CBT approach, beyond the conscious brain. We get into not only the why, but the why of the why, into the shadow work, and working with the meridian tapping. It's a conflation. I call it clinical meridian tapping. So it's a conflation. It's kind of a combination of my counseling therapy, the compassionate inquiry, the IFS, internal family systems. I'm standing on the shoulders of the people who trained me.
Yeah.
So it's really exciting because of the results that I am privileged to witness. It's like, and it's getting great reviews. So people with anxiety, I wrote the book for people with anxiety, so as to not overwhelm anybody. It's one step at a time. And it works, it emulates my therapy, which is in layers. So we begin with that, just, okay, patients all will be revealed, a certain addressing the mindset, and kind of calming people down, kind of regulating their amygdala, and introducing, you know, kind of get the cortisol down, the stress hormone, and introducing an idea of contract with self. And that's where the meditation came in. Like, have you noticed, Kathy, that everything that you do in service ends up coming back to you multiplied? And that's what I found with the book.
Yeah, I totally understand.
Yeah.
I recognize that, you know, when you're on a path for something, things divinely open up. And I'm a big believer in the divine. I, like you, I always have been. I think everything happens on time, exactly as it's supposed to. It unfolds the way it's supposed to manifestate in every individual's life.
Yeah.
And so that's not religious. That's about being connected to something outside of yourself, whatever that looks like to you.
Yeah, in the flow.
In the flow. In the universal flow.
In the
So I'm
flow.
going to go back to the question I had about the meditation, and then those 4 other pieces, because you talked about a 5-step thing that you talk about in the book. I don't want to dig too deep into it because I want people to read the book for sure.
Okay.
But let's kind of go over what those 5 pieces are. And because really I am curious about the meditation pieces. I know so many people are practicing meditation.
Okay.
But many are not getting the results they need from it.
Okay. So the meditation actually is it's just part of a precursor.
Understand.
The discovery stages, if you will. The whole thing is based on a metaphor of the hero's journey. Carl Jung, Joseph Campbell, all those guys. And so it's going from, this is how I describe it. There's the 3 pieces of the pie: what you know that you know, what you know that you don't know, and the biggest piece is what you don't know that you don't know. And it turns out that most of that stuff, of course, is in the subconscious.
Totally.
Right? So the focus of the book, the meditation, is part of that platform for the basics. That's a precursor. That's before the first discovery stage. So in the hero's journey, there's the 5 discovery stages that come in layers, just like in my therapy. So the first stage, if you will, as the hero, you're the hero on the journey, looking at new beginnings, just opening that lens, that curiosity to what is possible and all the parts that um, inform that. So the first stage is just looking at the world with fresh eyes, starting to be curious about what is the subconscious, what is change all about, and each discovery stage and each stepping stone within the discovery stage is a little bit of a chunk. So nobody has to be overloaded, and you just take it one step at a time, trusting that you're in process, and that it's more like patience, all will be revealed. So I can go over the 5 stages. It's if you want.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And just in short, just to give people an idea, and I do want people to know that when you read the book, I've had the privilege of reviewing the book and going over it and reading segments. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to read the entire book before we got together today, but I was certainly able to read enough to get the gist of what's going on. And I have to say that there are some true guided steps that really do help. And I guess that's kind of why I'm leaning into that question, is those guided steps are just so valuable. And on top of that, there's in between the chapters, there are some incredible pictograms that really sort of show what you keep talking about is the flow, right? So your pictures really bring out a little bit of the flow. And I also, just as we're getting into this conversation further, want to talk about the artwork that's within it, because I mean, your cover is extraordinary. And then on the inside, these pictograms are just like really, really, they sort of solidify the teachings that come between the pages. It's really well done.
Yeah, it's funky. It's been such a journey talking with people in the development of the book. And I mean, I do work with people around the world, but this has really kind of broadened it even more. The graphic artist is from the Philippines. The designer is in New Zealand. I mean, you're always talking about when it's 7, I know when it's 7 p.m. in Alberta, it is 3 p.m. in New Zealand, and 12 and the next day, I think it's 12 o'clock in the Philippines, you know, and people in the States, UK, like you really have to be adept at time zones.
I know, it's crazy.
Like who knew?
I work with people, in Hong Kong on a regular basis, and they're always telling me, and they're meeting me at 12:30 at night their time, and it's like, 8 o'clock my time, and it's 12:30 their time the next day.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
I know. It's pretty neat. It's pretty neat, but like it has been a journey, that's for sure. The pictures are, so there's lots of pictures. Okay, it's the whole idea is, oh, anxiety workbook, I can't do it. I'm going, I've heard it's clear, it's concise, it's palatable. It emulates my therapy. I'm not in the business to overwhelm anybody. So it's patience, all will be revealed. It's one step. When you're ready for that, depends how you read it. You can read it front to back and go, holy cow, there's some really good information here. Or you can process the program. Like it's all based on my work that I developed a number of years ago called Anxiety Repatterning Therapy Art. And it's one of in my brochure, I call it Doobie Doobie Doo. Which,
like, Doobie Doobie Doo sounds perfect.
So there's a doing time. Okay, let's read, blah, blah, but then there's a being time. So if you don't allow that time to integrate, to let it sink into your bones, you're going to be skimming. I see a lot of people, and you can tell when you talk with them that they're processing, but it takes time to shift knowledge into wisdom.
Oh, absolutely.
To deepen with it, right? And that's
absolutely
experience. Try on the technique. So in reading the book, you can read it and go, yeah, or you can deepen with it and go, yeah.
Well, I like the part.
Yeah.
Speaking of if you have just tuned in, ladies and gentlemen, you have tuned into CHLY 101.7 FM in gorgeous Nanaimo, although we talked to you all the way down to Duncan and all the way up to Cabo River, all the way over to Sunshine Coast and even into North Vancouver. So if you've tuned in, thank you so much for tuning in today. We're glad you're here. in the Zoom booth. So by the way, being that it's a Zoom booth, there's going to be potentially noises, dogs barking, chimes a chime, and songs are being sung in the background, phones are ringing. Don't even think about it. It's part of the experience. We're glad that you're here listening to the meat and potatoes of the show, which is about Helena Green and her fantastic new book, her brilliant new book, Anxiety Therapy at Home, Dancing with Your Shadow. Where did the dancing with your shadow part come in, by the way? Oh, and by the way, go grab a paper and a pen because you're going to need this so that you're able to write down Helena's information in a little bit. But what brought you to the dancing with your shadow component of your teachings?
That kind of evolved out of my therapy over the years, and understanding and working with CBT for a while. I mean, cognitive, that's the acronym for cognitive behavioral therapy. And I mean, there is this concept and this dimension of understanding yourself. The Greeks said it, right? Know thyself.
Yeah.
And part of that is the shadow work, where that usually lies in the subconscious. It's stuff that we don't want to think about, know about. And so we keep on repeating the same patterns. And so it's just, that's the way I'm wired. You keep knocking on doors until you find answers. And for me, the answers were in the subconscious. And then from there, it was like, what in my practice, as I do, professional training yearly, of course, where did my journey take me? And that was basically to meridian tapping. Meridian tapping connects with not only the body and the emotion, but also it allows that part of you that never got the attention that he or she needed to surface. And that's most of the healing. Everybody needs to be seen and heard. And you're in a position in the present. So to nourish that part of you, that inner child. So with the shadow work, again, it's in layers. That's sort of, that comes right after the meridian tapping. So you're able to engage that part of you without being overwhelmed, it's not exposure therapy. We're trying to be very, what the word of the day is? It's compassion.
Yes.
It's all about compassion and presence. Okay. I mean, that's what it's all about. In my humble
right now, I think that we have, there's a lot of hatred and anger going on in the world today. You're seeing it, I'm sure, all over the news, where people are talking about with COVID, certainly what happened with the United States, where it became the China virus, and there's a lot of new racism, there's a lot of new hatred. And so what we're seeing that people are coming into counseling practices trying to figure out what their identity is after being bullied and beaten down in ways that they never thought, at least living in Canada, that they would find themselves in. And so I hear you when you say the compassion and the empathy. It's all about being kind to yourself as you would be to other people as well, right?
For sure. And part of that dynamic happens when you are able to step out of your story. When you step out of your story, you see, I kind of equate things, or the way I describe things to people is, you can be in the trenches in life and be lost in your, the hamster on the wheel, and you're unconscious essentially. But then with tools and strategies and tapping, clinical meridian tapping, you're able to step out of your story to see your story. And with that comes a dimension of seeing the human condition, your own as well as others, in a whole different light. You start seeing, wow, look at that story, the curiosity of it. And I model humor, okay? Laughing and crying, that's the same to me. So it's what part of the vibe care too, and that's in the book. So there's acceptance, there's gratitude, there's curiosity, and there's humor. Those are 4 lenses in when you have that awareness, and you've done all these other deepening exercises and awareness, you are able to bring those to the table to shift whatever is going on, not to bury any feelings alive, okay? Because there's very important to you who need to be healed, need attention, and you kind of go, it's okay, it's all right, we got this. And with those lenses, that can help you in the moment to kind of function, bring a whole different understanding of the human condition. All the people who are kind of acting, a technical term is nuts, who are just, they've lost their way, but they're not necessary. They're just full of fear and anger. For the record, is a secondary emotion.
Yeah.
Anger is just a way that we cope with all this stuff underneath.
Yes.
I don't know if underneath. Anxiety, guilt, shame, fear, shock, all that stuff. We kind of get angry. It's a comprehensive workbook, right? I mean, it's the breadth and depth of what I think I know.
Mm-hmm.
What?
And the things that people will pull from it are going to be as individual as people are, right? I mean, they're going to pull different things out of the book that may not have necessarily even been your intention, and then they've come in and it like it's an aha moment, right?
Yeah, that's interesting. You said that. One of the I guess endorsements that I've received so far was from a nurse. And she works with the elderly, and she had commented that part of the dynamic of the book that she really enjoys is it meets her where she's at. So it is this kind of, some things kind of are more universal and they work in the moment, but also at different periods of time, depending where you're at. So it's that kind of information, that kind of insight in the book where I guess that's the proof is in the pudding. I'm delighted at the feedback that I'm getting. So,
well, I'm going to just share some of the feedback actually, because you do have some really extraordinary feedback. One of the testimonials says, "I am speechless. This is the best anxiety management book I have ever read. I could not stop reading it, and I've only just finished. Great job." And this comes from Dr. I can't pronounce the name, but Dr. Muti Kachali, MD. Another one says, "A personal touch to self-help and a more balanced life. The author presents a face-to-face journey of solution finding, structured on self-analysis, journaling, physical exercise, and tapping to walk you through the solutions to resolve anxiety and personal pain. Well written with fascinating illustrations to be used as a constant companion, piece of advice, and guidance. Amazingly, despite the friendly personal tone, I find that many complex terms and ideas are addressed. The pointers techniques give practical structure, but lots is actually really, really deep." Professor Peter Gresshoff, PhD, DSC. So, I mean, those are just two of the accolades that you have received in just such a short time. This book isn't out on the shelf yet. It's coming. So tell us a little bit about, the journey getting you from publishing, which is where you are right now, to getting it out to the universe and into people's hands.
Oh, at the moment, there is a little bit of there's a dance that Amazon imposes on the self-publishing world, and I guess everyone, and navigating that journey is quite the character builder. Not that I don't have enough character already, but there's this like the
Comprendo.
What happens?
I'm sure that people are driving down the road having a giggle because they can see themselves in that too. It's so true the way things go, right?
It is, right? You think it's, you just write a book, just like, no. So the rule is for Amazon to let this workbook see the light of day, you are required to have a certain sort of a contingent of people who have heard the buzz. So they're called advanced copy readers. So right now, I am spreading the word to the world to receive a free copy of the working file. So it's not a nice book, and it's a draft. It's a final draft, but the content more or less is there. In exchange for, in a certain period of time between the publication and the launch date, you purchase the book at the special price. I think it's $3.99 or something instead of $20, and give me a review. with that set before the launch date, then that enables the book actually to be essentially seen. Otherwise, and that's, so I'm looking for advanced copy readers. It is really, doing very well.
How do
But
people become an advanced copy reader then? Do they just go to Amazon and look you up, or how do they how do they find you?
yeah, they have to go to my website. That's probably the easiest, because there's a mail list that you can sign into. And then there's also it gives a bit of a preview about what the book looks like with the hero's journey graphic on there. And then ultimately, when you can purchase the book, there's a button there as well. But the website is Counseling for the Health of It, with dashes in between the words. Counseling is with 2 L's.com. And there's a specific page on the workbook for anxiety therapy at home. So it's Counseling for the Health of It. It's easy to remember.
Very easy. And just so people have an understanding, I personally think it's really worth the time to really evaluate this book. You're going to learn a little something about yourself by doing so. And I think that in this time of so much anxiety in the world, so much pain in the world, I think it's a really good idea to kind of think about it. And I'm just going to go over a little bit of the chapter stuff so people know what this book entails. You start with stepping stones, right? All the way through, there's different stepping stones. And I love that analysis, because it's one stone at a time that we are, standing on, turning over and seeing what's underneath that stone, and then replacing it with new and better ways of seeing a situation, or the narrative of the story, as you spoke of a bit ago. But you talk about change, the subconscious, hidden truths and blocks. You review and reflect, and then you move into the next discovery, which is to tune in. And that's where we talked a little bit earlier about mindfulness. And then you go into some influencers and some themes that are part of the genogram. I'm not clear what that means. Maybe you could help us a little bit with the genogram part 1 and 2.
So again, we were talking about the story. What's your story?
Right.
What's your story about your story? Right. And this helps you understand what was modeled for you in your childhood, and what was modeled for your parents in your childhood.
Yes.
And you start seeing the genogram does 3 things. It gives you information on what does the writings on my subconscious wall look like anyway, the stuff that you don't know that you're accessing, but you are. Okay. So first of all, you get an idea of what is the story as you're stepping out of the story. So that's the second dimension of the benefits of it. But you also get patterns in what are the family themes over generations, and what have you pulled out of that. And the genogram, actually, it's like a family tree, right? So that even looks like a funnel. When you think of it like that, okay? And at one point, years ago, I saw, you know what? Right now, you might be at the bottom of the funnel, getting whatever and regurgitating it and reliving it and breathing life into the same stuff that keeps you stuck. But once you have awareness, when you tip it over 180 degrees, you're standing on the shoulders of your ancestors, right? Like that
sounds so, and I love this in this conversation, because the one thing that I know, from First Nations culture, is that the ancestors are the teachers. And I love the way you said standing on the ancestors, standing in that awareness that you're not alone, even if the story isn't necessarily a story of comfort or joy. There are a lot of people that struggle in their family of origin dynamics, and they haven't yet to get through. But knowing that how you're circled by this, and that you can rewrite that narrative, is really very fascinating. I also just wanted to kind of move into some of these other things that you talk about, because I'm sure that when you're in that second piece, that mindful, the influencers, the themes, that's when we start moving into the sabotaging. And so many people sabotage. Can you talk a little bit about the sabotage and the emotions, and how that all works, and how people can, through working the steps in your book, find some peace in those areas?
It just to ground this part of the conversation, it takes a great deal of strength and awareness, and courage to show up, to be vulnerable and risk.
Absolutely.
And that's part of the workbook as well, is you're doing this at home.
Yes.
So there is sort of an insulating, safe factor. You do it at your own pace, because talking about your shadow, you're kind of jumping into a part that people resist. And
Yes.
and the chapter, or in Stepping Stone Discovery, like way back, it talks about the hidden blocks. So you've got those at work. Hidden blocks are loss of identity, fear of change, just fear of safety, and deservedness. So those are the categories. So you've got all these elements playing out, and it shows up as yes, but, or
Mhm.
I can't, or I
Yes.
shouldn't, or like, right? So all those things are coming up as we go, I'm okay, I'm okay.
Yeah.
Feelings buried alive, never die. In the shadow work, we look in terms of what are the roles that you play in your life, and you can kind of get comfortable with that, but then look at those individual roles, see what that behavior is about, and the shadow part of those roles could be something like a bully. If you have a little bit of bully, kind of pushy behavior, that's just part of your personality, and you kind of go, well, it is what it is. But
That's
the underneath the bully is likely to be something like low self-esteem.
yes. Very true.
Okay.
Or
Um,
very that child that's not been cared for comes up through the adult life, even though the body is still behaving like the
you
5-year-old
bet.
or the 12-year-old.
You bet.
I personally like to think that I have 3 children inside of me. I have my 5-year-old, right? My 5-year-old is like, I don't wanna. Don't make me do X, Y, Z. Things that are very frustrating, that bring that very,
Yeah.
very youthful child. Then there's my 12-year-old, a teenager who's a little bit more, she's not quite a teenager yet. So she's wanting to explore and expand. But as a 12-year-old, she's still behaving like a little kid. She hasn't got all of the pieces in place. And then I have, because I'm an older woman, like you are, we are in Act 3, right? We're at the
Say
third
what?
stage
You're
of
breaking
our lives.
up.
Exactly, right?
Oh, there.
When you
What?
called yourself an old lady earlier, I figured I could go
No,
with
I'm kidding. I'm
I
kidding.
know you
I
are. I
say
know you are.
old
But I
lady.
think we all of us have these little inner personalities. I guess as we're talking about this, you have brought this up a lot, and this is because it's your book, right? You're doing this at home. How do you deal with like some of those pains that are going to come up from our 5-year-old self, that our sabotaging self, from the story we tell ourselves? They get to be pretty, if you've ever done any processing before, it can be
Right.
pretty painful.
You know what? The biggest one that needs perhaps a little bit of airtime, and it's not about the age, because your different personalities come about age. That informs it, but it's the roles that you play.
Right.
This is about roles, okay? The roles that you play could be a sacrificing role, especially, sorry, I mean, I hear it from both genders, but for sure women
Yeah.
got this sacrificing, and social media and our culture seems to reinforce that. The sacrificing role, um, when you and I know lots of spiritual women who find that there's some kind of a double standard that they run up against, pride goes before a fall and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
That's just that's double jeopardy. in
Yep.
in the end, they sacrifice, and the underneath it all is there's a sense of they're not good enough.
Yeah.
And that's a theme that warrants some kind of a nod, that idea of people don't feel that they're good enough,
Or that they matter.
or that they matter, or that they're lovable.
Yeah.
And they're all kind of, when you go underneath all these layers of ideas, there is a core belief, and that's what the tapping gets into. What is your core belief that is informed by all these events that that reinforce that belief? So you're able to, that's the challenge, is first, I mean, and it's layers again, to be able to come to a point where, oh, I recognize you. Okay,
Yes.
that's okay. Yes, that was 5 years old, and mom, you know,
Yeah.
never showed up at whatever. She didn't
Yeah.
pick me up on time from school. Uh, what does it mean? The worst possible explanation will be what the brain chooses. I'm not good enough. I'm not lovable, whatever. And then all the other events reinforce the first belief. That's just the nature of the mind. So it's just all, and working with the shadow, you have to work through the whole book to get to that point,
So
right? Because
even
then
if
you're
you're,
equipped. You have to be equipped to be able to do this.
but this is what I'm saying, and this is why I'm curious. I'm very,
Yeah.
very curious for those people that are really struggling and they're going through the book and they're taking it piece by piece and they're doing what they're, but they're still, usually if people are picking up anxiety books, it's because they have anxiety, right? Like people who are wanting to get through something that's challenging for
Well,
them.
yeah.
If people pick up books on cancer, they pick up a book on cancer because either someone that they know or someone that they love or themselves have it. So how does this book really as an overall blanket support that the person that is buying this book because of anxiety?
Well, again, I can't reinforce it enough. It is a step-by-step process.
Yeah.
So it's a patient's all will be revealed. First, you look at it's when people come to me in therapy, it emulates my therapy, right?
Yeah.
So here's this crucible or psyche, let's call it a psyche spa, time and space to just kind of figure stuff out. And that's the conscious brain. But you also work with tapping, with hearing the hidden, the knowing the blocks, all these different tools and strategies, the mindfulness, the vibe care, emotional work through the mindful. It's all stages. So you are supported. This is not. A lot of people ask for the red pill. Where's the red pill? Or can't you just give me the silver bullet?
There's
It
no such
takes
thing as a silver bullet. You got to do the work.
you
And
do the
one thing, yeah,
discovery 3, for example, is what are you practicing? It's all about what are you practicing. So it's one thing to think you know. This isn't about knowing.
yep.
This is about the practice of awareness and getting in touch with your emotions and your body and working with them in turn, practicing. And so at the same time as you have these practical tools in the conscious brain, the tapping, the meridian tapping gets in touch with the cause, which is the subconscious. And they work together in tandem as you make your way. And so with that healing, that deepening and healing, you are resourced. So things don't just, so life just changes. You don't have the same lens. And it isn't an all of a sudden thing. It's not something that, like St. Paul, I guess, fell off his horse and found God. Like, it's kind of not like that. You're not going to fall off a horse. It's just going to.
It's just going to be a gradual new knowing. But because this is such an important part of the book, I mean, you do go into the meat and potatoes, right? You
Yeah.
talk about the trauma capsule. And then you start moving into, you certainly are continuous with the hero, the parts of your shadow that you can support. And then you review and you reflect again. It also then moves into another subject, which is called the wholehearted you, where it deals with the anger mask, forgiveness, ritual, and then moves back into that review and reflect on what's happened for you. So as we move through the book, right, there's, again, you keep talking the stones, right, the stepping stones. This is not a quick thing. You take your time, you go through it moment by moment. I'm curious about the trauma capsule. Can you tell us a little bit more about how trauma affects us?
Okay. Yeah, that's a good theoretical kind of visual. So, because I'm into learn the rules so you can play,
I hear you.
or maybe learn the rules so you can break them properly. I don't know. Let's go with the first one. So what happens is, let's just say whatever point in time this happens. Uh, what's an example for you where, if you want to share something that when you think back, it still kind of bothers you way
As far
back?
as far as a trauma or something that
Well,
happened.
as far as something that when you think about it now, it still kind of bugs you.
Oh, can I say my ex-husband?
Okay, sure. All right, so there's something with the ex-husband.
Yeah, he was unfortunately very verbally and mentally abusive. He was not physically abusive, but he was very
Okay,
mentally and whatever. So I went through tremendous trauma about that for a long,
okay,
long period of time.
all right.
Thankfully,
So
I'm free.
so what happens, and I'm sorry that you had to live through that, but I believe that everything happens for a reason,
I
and
do
you've
too.
been helping it shift is to see him as a teacher, for example. But that takes work, okay? That does not just happen.
I
Um,
totally am
but
there with you though. So I've done, because I've
yeah,
done the work. So
yeah,
I do
yeah,
see the
cool.
teacher now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what happens with trauma is something happens. There's going to be maybe the time of day, or were you hungry? Were you alone? Who was involved? Was it an authority figure? Your age? Like there's all these different variables that happen, and we cope by housing all of that information, data, we're energy, electromagnetic energy beings, housing it in a trauma capsule. And we bury those feelings alive a lot of times.
Yes, so true.
So, and we think that we're okay. Well, okay, that happened 5 years ago. But then on that same anniversary date, I get upset. Or whenever it's dark and cold. Or whenever I talk to men, or when anything that activates one of the variables, 2 or 3 in the trauma capsule, you get triggered and you're going, what the heck? I don't know why. It's just, and you don't, if you're not doing it consciously, then you're subject to these triggers, and you don't know why.
Yeah, I agree.
Because, right, because we're wired to just kind of keep going. The ironic thing in healing is, rather than turn away from your shadow and your trauma and whatever, the challenge is to be present enough, to be courageous enough to turn in the direction of your shadow, in the direction of your trauma, and take a good look and help those parts of you that were buried alive to surface. That's the work with shadow, is to gaze in that direction. And there's all sorts of practical tools as well. To what do you do when how you engage your shadow? It's in the book.
Well, I know for myself, when I experienced the trauma, tomorrow will have been a wedding anniversary. I was married on the first day of spring, several years ago. And I've been free from the marriage and the life for the last 10 years. But I really wanted to elaborate on your point, and that is, it is a time thing. This doesn't happen or change your body or your mind overnight. I've done my work. I've done a lot of therapy. I've certainly done a lot of self-help type stuff, much like the kinds of work, like a similar style, not a similar style workbook. It's your book is very unique and it's very different than most that are out there, but I've certainly done the work for what I needed to do. Having said that, it does not mean that after 10 years of living in this city, I don't still look over my shoulder. I don't still have a trauma piece. I most definitely still do. However, instead of it being an everyday part of my life, it's now the anniversary of my wedding or the anniversary of something that was significant. So just, as a word out there for people, to remember that trauma is something that does stick with people for a period of time until it's dealt with. If we don't deal with it, then that's when other things come up. And if you can change the narrative without changing, you have to face what happened and deal with what happened. And that's scary. Like you said, it takes a lot of courage for somebody to step out of that pain and really work it through.
Yeah.
But on the other end, there's great joy.
Yeah,
my life is far better now after
you,
10 years than I could have ever imagined it would have been had I stayed.
well, and you've kind of brought up a vibe that it's a good point. People think they need to just power through and face it.
Yes.
And that is the reality is that trauma is not something that you can think through normally. It's engaging the part of you that is disconnected, and that is through the body and through emotions, because that's how it happens. The event, then the first response is the emotion, and we're in the body. That's how it happens. The brain and the belief system parachutes in after.
Yes.
and makes sense of it and picks the worst thing. And then the behavior follows. So it makes sense to, you have to face it. You have to do something with it to heal it. Well, ironically, it's not to power through. It's not to think it through. It's not to talk yourself out of it. And a lot of affirmations is I'm okay. And it's just like looking at it, connecting with that younger self and holding her. And that's part of that. Clinical meridian tapping is innovative. It is, I've created something out of a conflation of all those other modalities that I was lucky enough to be certified in. So it's deeply connecting with those injured parts without re-traumatizing anybody. It's actually giving them voice and compassion. So we're not powering through and we're not thinking it through. We're connecting with the energy, the trauma in the body and in the emotion. That's how and then there is, I used to think some people are so traumatized they can't be healed. I believe now that anyone is healable if they have that strength, if they have that commitment. That's what it is. Commitment to getting in touch with those parts of themselves through the body and the emotion. It's not thinking through. And so there's a way for you for anybody to not have on the anniversary of anything, to actually really get in touch with those little parts that are still hanging in there. Yeah, they need attention.
I think you're right. And I love how you said, as you're going through it, about it's not about re-traumatizing. It's about looking at it with a different lens and becoming at one with it. And that takes time. It is not an overnight. None of this stuff, nothing that's really hurts you deeply can go away just like that. And I really value what you said. I'm pulling up a page from your book. And this one I really love as an introduction to the idea of working with ourselves, right? So this is, I'm not sure what page number it is, but it's fairly early on in the book. And it says, a psychologist walked around a room while teaching stress management to an audience. And as she raised her glass of water, everyone expected they'd be asked the half empty or half full question. Instead, with a smile on her face, she inquired, "How heavy is this glass of water?" Answers called out and ranged from 0.5 pounds to a pound. And she replied, "The absolute weight doesn't matter. It depends on how long I hold it. If I hold it for a minute, it's not a problem. If I hold it for an hour, I'll have an ache in my arm. If I hold it for a day, my arm will feel numb and paralyzed. In each case, the weight of the glass doesn't change, but the longer I hold it, the heavier it becomes." She continued, "The anxieties and stresses in life are like that glass of water. Think about them for a while and nothing happens. Think about them a bit longer and they begin to hurt. And if you think about them all day long, you'll feel paralyzed, incapable of doing anything." And insightfully, you write, "Remember to put the glass down." I find that piece to be a particularly moving and very clear picture of what happens for people when they're in trauma over the long haul. It's they forget to put the glass down and are constantly concerned about filling it with other things, filling it with something else, anything else. But really what happens is the glass overflows and becomes too heavy over the long haul to hold.
Right. Yeah, that's a quote from many workshops that I have been in attendance to. My take off of that, and just in general, my experience in counseling therapy, is people hold on to their pain or misery like it's their right, almost a hard-won prize.
Yeah.
That, like, and if you come to the table with, well, let's explore alternatives, the response is often, well, no, you don't understand. And the reality is, well, I probably have more understanding than you might think. I'm just inviting you to put down the glass.
Yes.
And people hold on to that glass like it's their right. No, you don't get it. Well, okay, let's talk. I'm here to work with you. Let's listen. Let's do it one step at a time. Oh, like, hey, did you hear yourself? Are you listening to what that little voice is saying?
Yeah.
Wow, how's that working for you?
Yeah.
What else could you? It's kind of like that.
Yeah, it's exactly, I agree with you. I think it's exactly like that. I really do feel that there's a lot of people that hold on. I've known people that hold on to something that happened from when they were, and this is not to minimize, but I have a friend who will not go into this particular shoe store ever again. He'll never walk in that shoe store again. But the reality was he's holding this glass from something that the shoe store clerk did to him when
Right.
he was, I don't know, 20, and he's now 64.
Yes.
And
And it
I'm
has
like,
nothing to do with the shoe
has
store.
nothing to
It
do
has
with the
nothing
shoe
to do with the
store.
shoe store.
But he's like, he's adamant that the shoe store, that's what happened. And so he keeps his mind in that story. And so he's lived a life of great pain and negativity instead of being able to just say, okay, well, that situation that happened, that store has been rebuilt many times over. I mean,
Yeah, and that's okay. That's his story, right? Like,
yeah,
we have our own stories, and everyone's our teacher, so we can look at him and go, "Wow, look at that, he's stuck." And immediately, because that's in the forgiveness thing that I'm published for in a
uh-huh.
previous, it's original. It's, I see you, I forgive you, I release you, I choose peace. Seeing him and seeing my own part in, he's my namaste reflection. What if I see that in him? What do I see in myself? Because ultimately everything is about, you're the center of your universe. What is he trying to teach me? What can I learn from this? Is the takeaway. Not, oh, look at him, he's doing it wrong. Oh, look at the states, they're
I hear what you're
crazy.
saying.
Oh, right. It's more, well, what does it mean?
That's very Course in Miracles style too. Is like, you are the center of the universe, and why would that even bother you in the first place? Why would it?
Yeah, for me, it's about Don Miguel Ruiz. He's yeah, that's one of those, the four agreements, and then the fifth agreement. The fifth agreement, beyond the four agreements are posted in the walk-in clinic in Nanaimo, by the way, on the walls, but at least they used to be. The fifth agreement is, don't believe a word I say, and don't believe yourself.
That's so
But
true.
listen,
I like the
listen,
don't believe myself part.
listen. Well, the rule is listen, okay? Listen, be open. That's to be to let the fresh air in, to let the divine wisdom, to let the namaste learning from the guy who's doing this and that to you. It's the being curious. Wow, look at
That's a
that.
wonderful flip of the story. It really is. Listen, we're just about the end of our program. If you've just tuned in now, I'm really sorry that you just tuned in, but you can watch it. You can watch it on YouTube on Tuesday morning at just after 8 o'clock. You'll find it posted. So by all means, go to Act 3 on YouTube, Act 3 Media Productions. You'll find us there. You know it's me because I got a microphone in front of my face. So just take a good look for that and make sure you can witness Helena Green and her information regarding anxiety therapy at home and Dancing with Your Shadow, an amazing book. We're almost at the end of the program though. And so at this part of it, I always ask my guests my favorite question, that curious question, that question of, if you could imbibe on community or people that you love or whatever, the teaching, like what would your what would be in your life lessons of the world? What would be your moment to share?
Okay. Um, okay. To me, everything is about light. I mean, it's a great kind. It's a view from 5,000 feet. Actually, it's as you're working life, and hopefully you're working towards your purpose, your gift to the world. What makes you shine? What works? It's a process of, not this. You try this, no, not this, not that, not this, not that. And in by process of exclusion, you find what is your vibe. What is, and it doesn't matter what it is. It could be collecting marbles. It could be veterinarian. It could be a radio show host. Whatever brings you joy is the name of the game. Know that you're in process, and know that you're good enough wherever you are. You're good enough. We need your light to be shining in confidence and brightly. And so the self-talk that keeps that light, that process from developing, we're on the journey to do that, just like the hero. That's the word, is you're good enough.
That's a great word. I'm good enough. You're good enough. We're all good enough. And we're good enough to reach out to you, Helena Green, and receive a copy of your book as an advanced reader. Anxiety Therapy at Home, Dancing with Your Shadow. How do people find you?
The best is probably to go to my website page, www, that's hard to say, wrap your lips around, and then it's counseling for the health of it with dashes between each word, counseling spelled with 2 L's.com. There's a lot on there. It's content driven. There's a lot of freebies. And you can certainly sign up on the mailing list on the workbook page, Anxiety Therapy at Home, Dancing with Your Shadow, the complete workbook for deep healing.
Wonderful. Well, I'm really glad to have had the opportunity
Thank you,
to have
Kathy.
you on this show. It's been
Thank
great.
you. It's a pleasure being with you and talking with you, and I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate your light, and I'm so glad that you shared it with our audience today, and look forward to having you on YouTube to share it with other communities. If you have just tuned in, like I said, I'm real sorry about that because you missed Helena Green, and she was marvelous. Please stay tuned to upcoming shows of Act 3 on CHLY 101.7 every Monday at 1 o'clock. We're super glad that you tune in, so thank you for doing so. And we really look forward to seeing you on Act 3 television. Finally, the episode is almost done. I mean, almost done, as in, I think it's going to air right after Easter. So make sure you tune into Shaw Cable 4 for Act 3 television with some of our usual guests and some of our favorite people. You'll be glad you tuned in. Thanks again. We'll see you next time on Act 3. Bye, everybody.
Take care.